So let's get started. Welcome everyone to this The Tech People Want Online Summit. We're really happy to see all of you here. I'm Sara Petti, I'm a project manager at Open Knowledge Foundation, and I'm going to give you a very, very short introduction about today. Basically, The Tech People Want is part of an initiative, a broader initiative that we have at Open Knowledge Foundation, which is The Tech We Want. The Tech We Want is a collective conversation about basically new practical ways to build software that is useful, simple, long-lasting, and really focused on solving people's real problems. The conversation today and tomorrow, so over the next couple of days, is basically really focused on technology that can serve people. What we observe is that technology should empower and not overwhelm people. But what we see more often than not is actually that all the tech tools that we rely upon basically are unnecessarily complex, they're expensive, they are hard to maintain, and they're over-engineered, and they're not focused on solving people's real problem. So basically what we want to do over the next couple of days with all of you is having a kind of like collective conversation about how we can rethink how technology basically supports our work. And so we have gathered non-technical professionals from all different fields like advocates, activists, project manager, data practitioners, and so on, to really start thinking basically how we can envision a technology that really serves and supports our work. So to get started today and to warm up a little bit, we have this session that is called Why Do People Want Open Data? And the session is actually a launch of a report called Towards a Sustainable Data Commons Ecosystem. All the authors of the study are here, so I'll leave them to tell you a bit more about it. But before we start, basically, I just wanted to share with you a few housekeeping notes. Just a reminder that this is a 2-hour session. There would be also a conversation with the audience, but please use the chat meanwhile to comment or ask any question, introduce yourself, and so on. I've seen that someone also, some of the authors have started also the shared notes. So if you go and have a look there, you can post all your questions there, and also they will be sharing useful resources and links in there. So go and have a look. Also, please keep your microphone muted unless you're really requested to speak, so that everyone can basically like listen to the session quietly. And also a reminder that this event follows the Open Knowledge Code of Conduct, of which I will put a link in the chat just now. The idea is that we really want to promote a healthy and respectful conversation between people from very different backgrounds. So aggressive behavior will not be tolerated, and we reserve ourselves the right to remove you if necessary. If by any chance you're posting anything on social media, I don't know if this is still a thing today, but please use the official hashtag, which is the Tech People Want, and also tag us at OKFN so that we can amplify your post. That being said, I wish you a very, very good summit. Reminder that the summit is going on the full day today. There's going to be a pause of 30 minutes just after this session, and then we will start again with opening remarks from the Open Knowledge Foundation, and then two-panel discussion and a keynote at the end of the day. And then tomorrow in the afternoon, for those around Central European time, there's going to be some spotlight sessions that are also going to be very interesting. So please join the full summit if you can. But now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Solana Larsen, who's the editor and co-author of Towards a Sustainable Data Commons Ecosystem report, because she will be the one explaining you a little bit more about the report, but especially moderating this session. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy it. Solana, I'll hand it over to you.
Good morning. Hi. Nice to see you all. We have actually a presentation, and I was just messaging you, Sarah, in the chat that maybe it's easier if you share it because I'm having a technical issue.
Of course.
It's nice to see you all. I'm Solana. I've been involved with open data, open internet, open all kinds of knowledge for many years, my entire career. I'm based in Berlin, Germany, and until recently, I used to work for the Mozilla Foundation. And before then, for something called Global Voices, which is also where I met Renata Avila and probably others who might be involved in the call today. So there's a new report coming. I joined quite late in the process. We're here with Ana and Semra, who will introduce themselves to you in a moment and who are going to tell you about what they did, who they interviewed, and what some of the findings of the report are. As Renata said in the chat, the report is going to be shared after the session. There's a PDF version. It's still in draft format. So if there's anything in there that you object to, you can also give us comments and feedback. Ana and Semra have done this research, and I'm going to ask them a couple of questions about what they learned and how that process was. And then we're going to meet some of the people that they interviewed in different parts of the world and hear more about their work. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to get our heads into this topic now, I don't know what time it is where you are. It's fairly early in the morning here. I'm going to invite Ana and Semra. Maybe you want to switch your cameras on as well? And then, there you are. Hi, Ana.
Hi.
So tell me. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Tell me about this report that you made. Why data commons? The report is called Towards a Sustainable Data Commons. There's some big questions in there about how we should be thinking about open data, how we should be rethinking open data. What is the problem with open data that you set out to solve?
Thank you, Solana. This is Semra. I'm based in Izmir, Turkey. It's new name. And I'm a master's student in ESE Clermont School of Business and Strat School of Design, called Strategy and Design for the Anthropocene. And I'm researching within the context of open science with regard to redirecting the power of technology in general. And I had my internship in CNRS, Internet and Society Lab. And through this network, I met Renata as well, because we were working on this broader project on sustainable data commons. And why data commons? Because it basically and simply works against silo logic and competitive logic and binary of totally closed and totally open, because we've experienced and seen that through the experiences of communities, the old open definition doesn't work anymore. So we need to make a new definition of open. And this shift towards the commons underlines the centrality of communities and the need to differentiate different levels of different degrees of access and responsibility. So there will be a government that decided by the communities on not only what to manage, but how to manage. And in our study, why we focused on that, there is already emergent new governance models that prioritize inclusivity, collaboration, and communal care that we think already resonates with principles of commons as we imagine.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And through that we saw, yeah, sure.
I will pass to Ana as well. Ana, if you want to introduce yourself and pick up where Semra left off, and maybe mention why these 3 case studies, and then we can even switch to the next slide.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, so my name is Ana Méndez de Andés. I'm an architect and urban planner based in Madrid. I have been working on commons for a long time now. I have been part of urban social movements for more than 10 years. And then I did my PhD on the becoming common of the public at the University of Sheffield. So I have been involved with this idea of what a different governance might mean, and also what is this tension between what we understand as a public, no, like what is maybe available to everybody. So this idea of openness as what is, no, like the Open Knowledge Foundation are at the core of this definition of openness, no, like something that you can access without restrictions. And then we see that this has limitations of maybe especially in the last time with the new technologies, but in general, the idea that everything, you know, like we can have all the data that we need available, we've seen that it's not really feasible. And the idea of the commons introduces more aspects, introduces importantly the aspect of governance. It's not only that, you know, the data is open. We know that there are very different ways of how data can be open, can be accessible, how the decisions about the data, which kind of, you know, like platforms we use are very relevant here. But also very importantly, it introduces the idea of the community. So I think that with open data, we have more like a one-to-one relation, right? There is someone that produces the data and then makes it available, and then someone else uses the data in rather not even bidirectional, but unidirectional flow, right? So I do it, I put it, someone uses it, there is no feedback, not very much known of what is doing who. The idea of a community, and we will see in the presentation how this has been central in some of this experience, tries to figure out that the co-responsibility about who is managing, but also who is producing. And to me also very interestingly, the commons opens a middle space between something that is totally open with no restrictions, and then we have the totally private with a lot of restrictions, you know, that individual data needs. But commons open a whole range of possibilities of what happens in the middle. What happens when some people will have to access this data, but not everybody? What happens with the relations with the people that produce it, with the people that use it, with the people that analyze it? I mean, recognizing and accepting there are different kinds of groups of communities, but also of areas of action that is involved in the production, care, use, analyzing, utilizing of the data. This is important. So we propose.
Why don't we switch to the next slide even? And for those who are joining a little bit later, we're introducing a report. This is like a preview of a report that Ana and Semra have written. And it's going to be shared after the presentation. And we're just walking you through what happened, why did they make this report, what can you learn from it, and who are some of the people that they spoke to. That's what we're covering in this session. And then we're also going to be opening up for discussion at the end around what is this data commons, how can we rethink open data. That's where you'll all be invited towards the end. So I hope you enjoy this presentation. Ana and Semra have looked at academic literature, they've talked to lots of people, and they've come up with, I think, a really interesting structure for how to think about this, how to think about these big questions based on how things are today. So people's experiences today in these 3 case studies. And I wonder if you could both maybe walk us through, why did you pick open local government, open science, and open graphic design, these 3 areas? And maybe, I mean, you have this visual, this graphic on the left-hand side, which I think is fun once you understand what it is, but maybe you can explain this map, which is also in the report.
Yes, so as I was saying, that there are different kinds of, you know, communities, people, not like commons open this opportunity to think not only totally open public, not totally closed private, but everything in the middle. So actually this was proposed by the Open Knowledge Foundation, like that was the proposal for this report that was done for IT for Change in the context of their global data justice project, and we will have them also to explain what does it mean, this approach. But basically it's looking at 3 different kind of communities. One is open data in local governments in the global south with less than 1 million inhabitants. This is important because we were not looking at the big shiny examples, but the more, smaller municipalities, and see what is their experience. Then the second part will be the open science. So how knowledge is produced, how it's shared. And then lastly, graphic design has 2 interesting aspects. One is that it's unstructured data. It's, we can call it content. It's not spreadsheets, it's not database. It's a very different kind of content, but also it has been very much in the highlight. Famously, the case of OpenAI, making images with the style of Studio Ghibli, for example. This is one of the realms where really AI is producing an impact. So I don't know, Semra, do you want to explain?
Yeah, sure. I can give one example on this, how we position different communities in this ecosystem. Within one side, structured and formal, in the other side, unstructured and informal. I have a nice example how there is an interplay between them. For instance, in India, there was a new law to protect environment, and government asked from local fishers to share fishing grounds, the data on fishing grounds. So this is tricky, there's a dilemma. They wanted to share for protection of the environment, but also they wanted to protect their resources, that this data that they need to know only basically for their livelihood. And then what they did, basically they did a very detailed mapping of GPS, like pointing all the fishing points, patches, but then they decided to share a grid, a general visual representation of this data through visuals, and just saying, okay, there are fish patches here and there to give them kind of a protection. And this is somehow, it should normally be very structured, very formal side, open government data, but this pull from this visual kind of representation brought kind of protection for these traditional fisher communities, which I think represents really nicely.
So what, for example, what we are seeing in these experiences, by looking all kind of data, of producing of data, that there is a degree of fuzziness and obfuscation that we need when we deal with communities and with community data and community use of this data. So the idea that something is totally open doesn't work, because so it's like a tension. On the one hand, we don't have accessible all the data that we need, but on the other hand, we also need to protect and to manage the data that affects certain kind of communities, while allowing these communities to share it among them. So this is, kind of a tension that I think is interesting. And the other thing that we realize is that, as Renata said, at the beginning we say, okay, how very different communities share, like from very structured legal frameworks of the local governments. Very often they have national legislation that they tell you what to publish, sometimes how, not very often. Then the research, which has their own process. So this scheme goes from the very structured and formal, that is more related with these open local governments and their own ways to share the data. Then we have the research that deals not with actors' communities, their own communities of research, their own communities of learning, but also have to process and deal with the more structured world. And then the unstructured, more informal, as I said, content data. And what we saw is that it's not that there are 3 different kinds of communities sharing data, producing data, sharing data, and using data in different ways, but they're interconnected. Like open data, over and over, people told us, without an interpretation, this is pointless. If people cannot visualize it, if people cannot understand it, then why are you going to have it? And at the same time, research is moving between, creation of communities of themselves, but also the structuring of the data. One of the very interesting examples of the graphic would be the Visualizing Palestine project that uses both open data and research in order to produce graphic content that they share exactly for people. So how do you transfer data into information and information into knowledge is something that at the end of the day actually involve the three kinds of communities, the three kinds of approach to the data. So it's not like there are three different kind of ecosystems. What we understood at the end of the study is that any of this ecosystem is composed by aspects in which these three types of data actually contribute.
Thank you. Sarah, could we switch to the next slide, please? So let's get into a little bit about what people said. You spoke to 26 people in 12 countries, 4 continents, primarily in the Global South. What were some highlights for you? Maybe you want to begin, Semra. What were some of the things that stood out to you in talking to people? And maybe you could also mention what were the questions that you had for people, roughly speaking?
Sure. Basically, the main questions clustered within, I would say, 4 or 5 clusters. One is what they share and how they share, why they share, and what are the benefits of sharing, and also the barriers and concerns they have, the limitations they have. We wanted to basically build our question grid around this. And I think the highlight for me is the communities. I heard time and time again that community makes all the ecosystem meaningful. For instance, one researcher said she used to publish openly, but after she enters into communities, she really understood what open access means within the context of open science. And another researcher said, give people voice, and they will tell you what you need to make this real transition towards open science, for instance, in one case. And also, it's very, very important in the open science case, for instance, is that we really need to discuss what science is and what knowledge is to do this real transition to open science, because most of the communities think that the science has been deployed for domination, and we should shift this. And this can only be possible through the input from especially indigenous communities, traditional communities, or marginalized communities, all those really long history, and really the sense of community was highlighted a lot all through my interview. It was like a common thread, because they are the producers of those data and knowledge, as Anna emphasized, and they should be the ones who decide how to govern. And yeah, for me, these two are basic highlights, really.
What about for you, Anna?
For me, what I saw, and that was thanks to this highlight, as I said before, of IT for Change in the Global South, is that there is so much, I wouldn't say innovation, there is so much of what we need to rethink, and so much of the questions that we have to put forward, but also some of the solutions and some of the initiatives in the Global South, and that we usually know so little about it. I mean, like they are not, if we see even like, for example, in public open data, at the maps of the transnational organizations that are mapping the initiatives, we see that there are clear voids, in planetary voids where we don't know what is going on. And it might seem that this is empty of content, people contest this, but also the initiatives that we have found and precisely the questions that they pose are super relevant for us. In the case of open science, for example, and I think like Arturo later will tell us, the need to adapt to a different context, actually work to enlarge, the scope of open science, even in Europe. But also in the case of the graphic design, for example, there was also a very strong idea that by the way these products are communicated and how they combine online and offline, but also the nature of the production is something that is not in the middle. It's not the main patterns of the AI, and they see it as something that escape this, like homogenization view that AI produces. And in terms of open data in local governments, as Semra said, it was precisely the search for communities, that they think it was very relevant and made public open data relevant. And I think there again, certain initiatives in the Global South, and also their, I think, more finer understanding, as I said before, of the nuances between the totally open and the totally closed, will help us to figure out the governance issue and even the technological issue. What are the tools that we need to move forward this idea of a data commons ecosystem, which is, again, it's a little bit complex, because I always said in my interviews, first we have data, we can discuss what data is, a very strong definition of open. This was clear. Now we have data that is a commons, that is in an ecosystem that has to be sustainable, right? So this is the kind of complexity that we sometimes struggle with, but I think that this is where going to these examples that we have studied give us a lot of inputs.
Yeah, I mean, it's complex, but it's also simple at once, because you're talking about reframing open data so that the community is at the center. So you focus more on the community than on the data. And it's both narrative, but it's also, I think, it's a bit ideological, right? It's different about how we think of how we build these projects and how we talk about these projects and conceptualize them. But part of what you're showing is that there is lots of community already, and that any of the most successful open data projects have community involved with them already. We don't highlight it, or we don't think of it as something that is core to these projects, because I think the history has been more of a technical concept or a technical way of thinking about how these projects come to be. But I think those people who are in the call and those who are really passionate about open data also know about, the importance of community, and spend a lot of time making sure that anybody can do something with the data, because otherwise it's pointless. If we switch to...
Yeah, sorry, Solana, but I think what is important to also highlight here is that there are canonically, from Elie Rostrom, 3 elements of the commons, which is the resource, the community, and the governance. And as you said, okay, data, more or less, we have it identified, the communities are there, but I think that now the challenge is then what is this governance? And I think this is what we are missing from the local to the transnational level, is a new governance framework of how we are going to manage these assets that we already have.
So let's switch to the next slide, because these are some of your recommendations coming out of the study, and I think it touches on what you mean. How do we do governance, or how do we think about these things? Why did these recommendations, like from in each of the 3 case studies we had open science, you had local government, and you had the open graphic design. For each of these, you have both challenges and opportunities. And if those of you who look at the report, you can dig into in more detail into those specific sections. And then at the end of the report, you have these more general recommendations for the field. And yeah, I'm curious how you came to these in particular. And if you can explain them super briefly before we come to some of the next speakers.
Sure, I can first start with create conditions for sustainability from where you stopped. We saw tremendous amount of care and time that people put into sustaining, creating data, producing knowledge, and sustaining it. The researchers I interviewed, only one was working in open science institutions. Others were grassroots, and they put huge amount of work besides their own professional commitments. So how we would, for instance, create kind of a system of recognition and reward for this type of, so we need to define and create conditions of sustainability, not only infrastructural, but also maybe emotional or even financial, economic, you know. So we need to imagine those. And the same with the governance, as Ana said, generate structures for open data commons. This should be, again, discussed with communities and decided, but we really need also some sort of top-down policies and mandates that will ensure that these grassroots efforts will be sustained and will be stable and will really create a systemic change.
So I think that this links nicely with the idea of the promote technological sovereignty. And also one of the aspects that I found it was interesting in the study was, what do we do, or the need to transnational structures also for this kind of data, no? Like if public open data is very much, public open data is very much linked to the states and to the forms of government of the public institutions, and private data is very much linked to, you know, the individual rights, maybe community data needs some kind of trans-local, trans-regional, transnational structures also to ensure the sovereignty. So these communities don't really sometimes even have nations behind. So how are we going to take care of this data collectively, but not through the national public structure? So I think this was interesting. As I said before, of course, there is a huge difference between the North and the South. A lot of the projects, even the individuals that we have interviewed, depend on resources from the North to do this voluntary work. I mean, there are not enough resources. So this has to be also with the conditions of sustainability. Without sustainability, there is not sovereignty. You cannot make it yours, something that you cannot sustain. And for the AI, I think that, well, AI, I mean, like there will be sessions, you know, in this summit, I'm sure that will know much more than us. I think that one rule of thumb maybe I got from my interviews was that AI should be like in the middle. It's a tool. You cannot trust it to generate the data. You cannot trust it to generate the decisions. You can use it as a tool in the middle. You know? Someone in my interview said, like, AI always fails in the last 10% of the process, which is maybe, you know, what makes it, you know, interesting. So I think that this idea that AI, we need sovereignty in AI. There is a way to do federation of data so that we have enough data to train AI. We have seen examples of self-developed algorithms. So it is possible to use AI in another way because it is a tool. It's like any other technology. We just have to, keep it in check, I think.
Also, as Renata, emphasized on chat, when we are discussing about all these governance issues, it's also very important to address these big power asymmetries. So we are open to any research relevant that you know. Please let us know. Mm-hmm. So we will include in reporting the event.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we'll keep discussing this issue, and there's going to be a discussion for everybody at the end. We can go to the next slide. And we're going to meet somebody who you spoke to as part of this research. We're going to meet 3 different people who have a perspective on, the 3 case studies and the questions around the data commons.
So yes, our first guest, I would say, is Yugal Mahabir. He's part of the program lead of the local government at the Public Affairs Research Institute in South Africa. I don't know, Yugal, if you can maybe turn your camera on. I was very keen to interview someone from South Africa because, as I said, when you see this transnational map of open government, good practices in open government, Africa, big part of Asia are like, voids in this representation. But inside this representation, South Africa is the case that has been more documented. It's always showcased as the best case, in the continent. So I was very happy that I met Yugal and that they are actually starting to work with this idea of making data available for local governments and communities. So thank you very much, Yugal, for joining us.
Thank you.
And these are more or less the 2 questions that we wanted to put to Yugal about the specific context of the Global South in a country like South Africa. What are the challenges? But also, like, what did they think that was interesting of this proposal of the data common ecosystem in this context? So, to you, Yugal.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for the opportunity, firstly, to engage in the research and be part of the case study, and to contribute in that sense. And just to say, Anna and team, the Open Knowledge Foundation and in specific this research is actually the inspiration for us at the Public Affairs Research Institute to actually start a project to develop an open commons ecosystem for local government. So thank you for that. And if you wanted to see the impact of this research already, and you can see it's hopefully going to start something here for us in South Africa. So I think just to give a brief context regarding the opportunity and challenges and why open data in South Africa is so important, particularly in the local government context. So just a bit of background, South Africa has 3 spheres of government: a national government, 9 provinces, and 257 local municipalities. And as Anna pointed out, data collection and knowledge generation is relatively well developed in South Africa, but I think that the point Semra made in terms of the asymmetry in terms of where it lies and who controls it and how it's disseminated is the key problem. So if you look at our national data, for example, if you look at some of the like, for example, the International Budget Partnership, South Africa is ranked quite highly in budget transparency, in budget oversight, and in public participation. But as we go lower to provincial and local government, this tends to be a bit more difficult. Not so much from the government side, but as you pointed out and concluded from the research, in terms of the access and to communities and to research. So it's more top down as opposed to being spread quite equally across users of the data. And I think what's important I think 2 contexts is important when it comes to South Africa is that, firstly, our constitution and in particular our local government legislation promotes a lot of public participation and accountability in terms of communities holding local governments to account. And at the moment, one of the challenges we have is that it tends to be just in name. It's not really practically working. And one of the key reasons is because of a lack of knowledge and use of knowledge and use of data that communities and civil society and researchers can use in order to hold local government to account through these processes. So for example, one of the key processes that we have is for a municipality to to meet with the communities to develop what's called an integrated development plan, which will assist in the long-term projects for the community and then align budgets to that. But it's literally a unilateral type of engagement. The municipality comes, it shares whatever data and knowledge it has, and communities tend to be totally, lost when it comes to this. So it just becomes a tick box type of exercise, which is why things like open data and how to use data and how to translate data and to disseminate data becomes key in this regard. The good thing is in South Africa, our data collection, be it financial or non-financial, is legislated. So we have a national treasury, which is equivalent to a Department of Finance that is legislated to collect data, financial data, and to use that financial data to oversee the performance of provinces and local government. We have a body called Statistics South Africa, which is also legislated to get economic and non-financial type of data, GDP, inequality, etc., etc. So the data sets are quite available. There's quite a few at a national level, but also at a local government level. So the data sets are there. It's just in terms of how open and how shareable these are is where the issues come in. And I think one of the key problems we have related to my first point is that local government is meant to be accountable both upwards towards national and provincial government, because our constitution requires national and provincial government to oversee the performance of local government. But more importantly and equally, you have communities that need to then hold local government to account and oversee them. But there's a huge asymmetry in that. You have a situation where local government is actually more accountable to national and provincial government. And one of the reasons for this is because that's where the data and knowledge sits. And a local government knows that, people don't know as much as a national and provincial government. And you have this very interesting asymmetry in terms of who's accountable and where they're accountable. Just to touch a bit more, I think, on the opportunities. This framework for public participation and this framework for accountability, I think this is where open data and open knowledge becomes key, because we have it in theory, but the equal sharing of knowledge and sharing of data will assist in then improving these types of systems that we have to improve the performance and accountability in the system. I think, Anna, those are the opportunities. May I touch on some of the challenges, or would you like me to stop?
Yeah. No, but I think it's very interesting. It's like, actually, you could say this is the perspective from the Global South, but I have been talking with people also working in Europe and working transnationally, and they say this is actually the case mostly everywhere. I think that it is interesting because there we can see maybe more patent, but this is a shared problem across. And I find it also very interesting, and this is one of the focus of our report that people would see, is that we have linked open data government with open government. And this goes very often with another kind of digital tools that are promoting participation. So in that sense, this is very interesting. So we have the problem that sometimes data is not available, sometimes data is available, but is badly built, you cannot really understand it. But there are also another areas where the data that is needed by the communities, not by the central government, is not even produced, right? Because it is the central government that defines what is the data, what is the public data that counts. And the data that communities need, it doesn't count for them, no? So what I was, maybe you can explain a little bit more when you said it was very good to meet you, Ampare, because you said, okay, this is precisely, this idea of the data commons ecosystem is precisely what you guys then might have the opportunity to implement in your new project. So if you can also speak a little bit more about then, if open data is in crisis, then how this approach could help.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I just want to reiterate, it's amazing because sometimes you sit in, I think Semra made silo type of thinking. You sit in South Africa, think you have just unique problems, but it's amazing how through these engagements you actually learn that a lot of people in a lot of different countries are actually facing similar types of challenges. Yeah, and I think what was key in I think the research that you did and some of the challenges we have here, which is why we hope in our project can actually change that. Is that it's true in that the collection and more importantly the governance of these resources, knowledge, data is extremely decentralized. It's extremely unilateral. It's one person or one institute that decides what's needed, what's required, and I think that then it's like more a I will tell you what you need, as opposed to the people usually telling the collectors what they need. And I think that's a major problem. And I think what's also key, which is where our project comes in, is that these types of the data and the knowledge does exist. It's just that those type of issues around governance, around dissemination, around sharing becomes an issue, and we're hoping to bridge that gap in terms of filling in the holes where those factors become a problem. So for example, there are initiatives like by our National Treasury. They have two systems at the moment. It's called Go Muni and Vulika Mali, which is a Zulu word meaning open money, where they set platforms out in order to improve how data is shared and disseminated. But the thing is that it's only financial data. So we also have this issue where certain data collection and data collection agencies are stronger than the others. So our project is to try to create a common data, or in the correct term, a common ecosystem, whereby we as a facilitator of this will try to bring together all of these patches of information, patches of knowledge into a system that everyone can access it, as opposed to at the moment where if you're looking for a specific data, you have to go here or you have to go there. So essentially, you need to know what you're looking for and then where to look, as opposed to being accessible. But we want us to go a bit beyond this, because one of the problems we have here is that you can have data collected, like say financial data on cash flow management and liquidity ratios, and that doesn't really mean anything to the layperson. If you're a financial expert, you know what this means. If you work at the Department of Finance, you'll be able to tell the municipality, listen, this is not what you're doing, but the communities won't be able to understand that. So one of the other things is to make this data usable, to actually say, listen, we don't want to see the nuts and bolts. We want to see what this means for on the ground, and to share this knowledge, to share, like taking very complex data sometimes and then converting it into, or translating it into things that people want to use. And I think sorry, Anna, do you want to come in?
No, I think that, I don't know if you want to wrap up, but this actually connects very well with the other aspect of the open science, which is precisely trying to make sense of this. But if you want to finish your point, we will then move to Arturo to speak about this, how the knowledge is produced out of data.
Yeah. So then I think the last point is important. I think it's South Africa, being a developing country, has a very interesting dichotomy in terms of our society. You have people in Johannesburg that have access to Wi-Fi, access to smartphones, to computers, and then you have there's areas in the country that are deep and rural, where access is virtually, to latest technologies is very limited. And I think what's going to be a challenge in these type of thinking is, how do we then break this dichotomy? How do we create a system of dissemination that can reach all aspects of society, particularly given that our local government system is meant to be participatory democracy. So participation can't be good in Pretoria and in Johannesburg, but then struggle in rural areas. And I think that's an interesting context that we sit with in trying to think about these type of things. But yeah, thanks.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So let's move to the next our next guest.
Next slide, please.
Thanks.
So next up, we will cover open education initiatives we studied on. So our guest is Arturo Sanchez Pinada, and he's an engineer from Venezuela, currently working at Innate AI. And he's a former researcher at CERN, Switzerland, CNRS, France, and ICTP and INF, and Italy. And he's co-founder of two open education initiatives, Sevale 2VE, that were run between 2014 and 2017, and La Conga Physics, again from 2019 to 2024, that we interviewed him for. So he started by deploying big data sets that was produced at CERN during his time at CERN laboratories, together with his other colleagues from Europe and also from Latin America. So it's on to you, Arturo. Thank you so much for being with us today.
No, thank you guys for the time.
Questions, sorry. My two questions as seen. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Perfect.
Yes.
Sorry, just highlight my questions in our case study. What does open science mean in your project, in your initiatives, and how do you, or how this type of deployment drive equality in your initiatives? And in the second part, if you can talk about these north-south relationships regarding resources and innovation. Thank you.
Sure. Once again, thanks for the time, and hopefully this will be interesting for you guys. Yes, I am speaking now from Switzerland, but I am from Venezuela, and we have been. I always will speak in plural because obviously all this effort is not one person. Usually, it's a bunch of people at different stages of their career, of their studies, etc. So yes, in terms of science, it's a very interesting, at least for me. Let's say sector, because science usually means a lot of data. So we are talking about, in terms of the again, I am a technical guy, we are talking about terabytes of data. So it's not something about only openness, but you also usually, for doing big science, as they call it, you need absolutely big amount of data, big infrastructures to do this. So the challenge comes first for the sizes of all these things. Everything tends to be massive in terms of what you need in order to analyze. Obviously, there is science that uses much less, but at least the ones that have been more involved, that's the case. And also means big in terms of human resources, skills, scientists, eager students that are able to spend days and nights working on this, mainly because of the passion that they have, because once again, you are talking about science of people who really devote their life on doing this. So why all this matter in terms of open science, in the sense that many of these comes naturally, let's say, through academia. What I mean to say, like, people get excited about these scientific projects, to possible new discoveries, to be part of something big, and once again, when you are young at university, this sounds super cool. And this is one of the things why going open get you into this drive for equality, because the people want to participate. So it's more about how you bring them and to do something useful during this project, because the will be there. Again, very young people, but essentially when you go through the academia, even the more senior guys still have this passion. If they are still there, it's because they like it. If it's not, for sure they will be moving to something else. So that essentially drive, in that sense, the quality, because you have this bunch of people trying to work on teams. It's a lot of outreach, as you may saw in all these different projects, and the people that have been talking so far, and the next speaker. There is a lot of sense of how you get this knowledge to the public and make them understandable. That is just what the previous speaker was talking before. It's not some of these subjects of course, in the day-by-day by the scientists, quite sophisticated, quite narrow in the knowledge, quite precise in what they are doing, but it's always part of a big picture. So have this content outreach on what the people is doing, what this is important. Again, you need this open science, you need this open data to do reliable outreach. Also fighting against some misconceptions, some misinformation regarding to what these big projects are doing, why you are looking for these black holes when there are so many terrenal problems and more immediate things to solve. So obviously all these things needs reliable data, but at the same time easier to digest data at different levels, general public, students, etc., so that can be moved forward. So again, all this, what I meant to say is to try to drive this in open science in terms of equality on knowing what is happening and try to participate on it. In terms of what the laboratories, and we put it here, the different institutions, is because one of the things that have been super interesting to know is that at the same time you have very transverse, that's the right word, I guess, knowledge. So things, skills and abilities, tools, especially open source tools that are useful in different institutions, different levels. So we have been using at the beginning as a PhD student more to say, hey, we are doing this very cool science, we are trying to discover a new particle, etc. And we are very eager to say. So you create a project just to teach what you have seen so far. The things, obviously, you get older and you get involved and say, hey, this thing that I'm knowing to do, I can use it in X and Y and Z different projects. So I can use now the science as an excuse because it's cool, it's to say it, to bring skills and enhance the human resources, the human capital. This is in the places where we want to touch again, especially from the country we are from, but at the same time, due to the transversal, the usefulness, all this knowledge, when you prepare something for somebody, if it's well done, very probably will be useful through different layers. So this is when maybe I can jump to the second part, if you allow me, is this synergy between the north and the south, because you realize that many of these tools in open science, or in science in general, because requires many open sources tools. Even if you are inside a laboratory when the resources are on embargo, because it's again, even when it's a public founded research, still when these preliminary results, etc., data that you just your instrument station just took, you cannot just put it right away outside. So there is a moment where it's closed just by the nature of the activities that is done. But in any case, people inside need to use open sources tools. And so again, we use this now, this outreach that was mentioned before, this, hey, look what the big laboratories are doing, big collaboration, multinational collaboration are doing, as an excuse basically to teach these open source tools, these open source skills that we know by a fact, because that will be useful for that people, even if they don't go to science, even if they finish in the industry, even if they decided to create their own business, all these techniques will be, but if you sell it as a skill enhancing, some people will say, okay, that sounds like another course I need to take. But if essentially you use it more the science as a cool excuse to learn all these things. And this is when this transfer of knowledge pass not only in what direction, not only from the big laboratories down to the universities, school, etc., but also in the opposite direction. It was another thing that we were talking with Semra when our previous conversation, that one of the things as an engineer, as a scientist, you usually have limited resources, and you are very aware of all this. We are talking about how to host the data, where to store it, how to analyze it, what computer you can use, etc., etc. So because these scenarios are more restricted, even in places where I am from, for example, you learn to be to develop tools that are more performant, basically, because now you are saying, okay, I need to, and I mention this example all the time, I need to do this code, this piece of open data that, again, I need to bring from terabyte from a physicist experiment all the way to a couple of gigas, so it can be run in a computer in Caracas, in Merida, where I'm from, but also back to offboard, back to Kansas, back to here to Geneva. So if I know that it works in a restricted resource environment, we are not talking about This is why I like to use in these words, because we are not talking about poor resources, all people who have all computer. No, this is a restricted environment in terms of the amount of data, amount of space, amount of computational resources that you have. If you manage to do your code that productive there, for sure will be working in bigger environments, in more relaxed and flexible places. So we also learn from bringing these tools to this environment and say, okay, this didn't work. Let's come back to the design table and make it better because we are in this restricted environment. So we also learn from both sides. We have bringing a lot of knowledge in sense on that. Obviously, we are all talking today in English. That's another thing that happened, but those resources need to be translated. Now it's much easier. Of course, we have this artificial intelligence that makes us work even when we need to review all what we produce, but it's much easier. But before, you really need to have people who know how to translate, and in not only the literal way, because there are things that are the idiosyncrasy. Even when you are in Mexico, you will not say the same thing that if you are in Buenos Aires. So you bring a lot of people, and my conclusion is also, you also bring a lot of graphic design. That this is why I was so cool about learning about this experience, because at the end of the day, you are targeting different people, but at the beginning, many of these people are young people. And things need to look fine, need to look professional. And scientists, because I would put in that basket, who are terrible doing logos, doing titles, doing something that looks cool. Even the title of the paper sounds terrible, even if it's before the abstract. So we need to bring people who know how to write catching phrases, but still attached to the subject, nice color, professional design and also explain to them why we are doing this, so they feel part of this project. So, and again, most of this design comes from our places because they know how to communicate better with their own people around them. And we bring it back to CERN, we bring it back to the labs and say, look, it looks cool, it was amazing, it was done by these people. And at the same time, first by accident and second by design, we try to give the people opportunity to have jobs in this kind of research. You imagine that as a graphic designer in Merida doing a logo that will be used all around the world for experiments, or Colombians that manage our social media that is reaching people in other places of the world. That's super cool again. So we use at the end of the day, we just use this open science, open source, open data, and it's used to enhance the human resources, the capital, and the opportunity that they can have doing what they do.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe, yeah, Anna, go ahead.
No, that this leads so nicely to our next, guest that is precisely dealing with graphic design. So, and if Constanza, thank you very much, Arturo, for the project. It's amazing. Your project is, we really learn a lot from the experience of sharing tools and data sets and methodologies across the globe. And then here we have Constanza Figueroa. She's part of Amigas Hackers Club, but also other collaborative projects. And in our experience in the interviews with the graphic designers, and specifically, I have to say that we focused on graphic designers that they were working in a social justice environment. Let's say we didn't ask any social designer. We asked designers sharing the content inside, a very specific kind of aim. And in all the conversations, the aspect of the community, the aspect of the care of the community as well. But what's very important, so I think that Constanza has some insights about it that we were very eager that she shares with us. But also, as I said before, is one of the, let's say, fields of production with the generative AI has had an impact, or we are told that is having an impact. And as I said before, I think that also the experience from the Global South precisely on this aspect is very interesting. So up to you, Constanza. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, good morning. It's super early here in Mexico. I'm from Chile, but I'm living here. Thanks for the space and the opportunity. Amigas Hacker is a super small project. that basically seeks to support women and non-binary persons in the challenges that implies to build like critical feminist infrastructure, if we can say so. So about the communities, I can tell about a bit of this path. I came from, I'm a graphic designer, but also we do research or feminist facilitation. And I came from independent publishing and the peripheria, and I'm from a very neoliberal country that is Chile. And there is where I fell in love with the possibilities that internet allows us. Then, because of my sign work, I started working with human rights and technology. That is a very technical field, but also I have learned about from a context that has dedicated funds to develop graphics and colors and interesting shapes and try to understand very technical issues for a broader community that it's also very, very small and very geek and stubborn and ambitious in their ethics and needs for social justice. And something that I don't know if have happened to you is that when you work with a woman and non-binary persons, something that immediately appears is gender violence amplified by digital means. And as we have working with the different projects, we have the urgent need to share what we have been produced, or what are our answers and our strategies. And we learn a lot from feminist accompaniment, abortion accompaniment, and also feminist facilitation and creativity. So we build up some repositories such as Ciberseguras, La Musea Mami, Acoso Online, and we need to use open licenses for everything that we produce in order to make easier to share this type of content. And also, but it's not just the licenses that we use, it's also the way that we talk with sweetness, rebellion, coquetry also, and compassion, because the work that we develop resonates and it's super important with the Latin America and the global majority feminists. So I can say that my experience of a community is something I like to call señoras de internet. It's like internet old ladies, such as persons that, well, we call this as a collective, but it's also a self-organized space, and you can also do your own señoras de internet space with your community. And their characteristics mainly are the experience in terms of nobody's going to tell me how some things are working for us. Also, a lot of care work, a huge amount of generosity, also some attachment, of course, and also the connection that brings us the chisme in Spanish, the gossip, and also the challenges that we have of building the co-responsibilities and to take care of ourselves too. So my experience of a community is a space of a lot of generosity, a place where we need to sustain us, because we know that, and here where I talk about compassion, we all know that we are doing all the best that we can possibly do, and that learn together is sometimes it's hard, but it's the most valuable thing that we have. And I don't know if you have anything to add to this.
I think that what is very interesting also when you include the communities in the picture is precisely that things are not technical or so technical anymore. I mean, we are not talking about how to put in place technical infrastructures, but maybe infrastructures of care. But it's also interesting that even people talking with public data, no, like working with this, like very structured, legislated environments. They say if you want to build a data commons ecosystem, you need time and care. And this, I would say again, like it's across also all these fields. So yeah, this is one of the things I think that governance will have to take care, no, or the system of recognition and revenue. The other thing that I was, as I said before, interested is this specific mode of production content in the communities and from the South that somehow might or have the potential to have another relation with AI right now. In the report, I think that the only quote that survived, because we had to reduce a lot, is like how you were characterize AI, no? In Latin America, you said it's like it's a colonizing device.
I recently saw a meme. Thanks, Anna. I recently saw a meme. I have to modify it now, but it's like a person from the country that says, "Oh, in the future, I thought we had flying cars, but instead we have 100 different types of anxiety and maybe more." And I think in some terms, the technology and the interfaces and the algorithms can be very, very tricky. And for me, it's super important to maybe, chill about AI. And as you are also recommending, this is a tool, this is something that can help you in somehow. It has consequences, but also replicates the structures of power that makes us, I don't know, they're so super exigent and had a lot of characteristics that put the communities in danger and also isolates us. And one of the most beautiful parts of work as work in communications on facilitations is that hello.
It looks like.
Hello. I'm so sorry. My internet just fell. I don't know where did I got.
Everyone's internet failed, so I think you
Oh,
can just.
maybe it's the the black hole that you mentioned.
Exactly. It looks like we're all reconnecting. So just maybe, Costanza, if I can ask you to wait maybe 30 seconds so that we give a chance to everyone to reconnect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Constanza, mention this thing. Cuenta esto de que la IA es como las paperas.
¿Cómo las qué?
Como dijiste, como el sarampión. ¿No? Que la IA, dijiste, la IA es como una enfermedad, ¿no? Que traen los colonizadores, como el sarampión. Y la gente no está preparada. Cuenta esto, que es interesante y lo...
Ok, es que digo tanta cosa, después ya no me acuerdo.
Esa fue muy interesante. De hecho, dejé la cita y Solana pensaba que era como, ¿pero esta cita de quién es? Digo, no, de una de las entrevistas. Y dice, parece un libro. No, esa es muy relevante. ¿Si lo puedes contar?
A ver, deja acordarme. Va. No me agarré la cámara. Qué raro.
Pero bueno, es muy sencillito, ¿eh?
Ya.
Dices, es simplemente mencionarlo, ¿no? Como que o sea, porque creo que es como muy buena metáfora, ¿no? Es como, vale, nosotros estamos aquí haciendo nuestras cosas y de repente llega esto, ¿no? Con un ADN distinto y nos arrasa y de repente estamos aquí un poco como desprotegidas porque no viene de nosotros, tampoco hemos construido, ¿no? Como, no sé, creo que es interesante justo mucho en... ¿Are we back? No, como a lot of the conversations that we had around graphic design were precisely about this tension between how the technology is structured and how it's used and perceived in the global south. And that was more mentioned in graphic design than in any of the other two.
Okay, I think we are almost all back.
Okay.
Sorry again. I don't know exactly what happened there, but yeah, Costanza, you can.
Yeah.
The last remark about the role of
AI. Anna. Yeah, something very interesting on the graphic design work is that we are all building metaphors around the technical issues. And what's the translation of the illness? Paperas?
Measles.
Measles. Yeah. So in this very interesting interview that we had, I told her that artificial intelligence is like measles. Because I don't know, we in Latin America, the indigenous community were like, okay, we are looking on how to sustain our communities and our crops, and we have a relationship with the sun, and suddenly, the Spanish or the colonizers came with all their frameworks and their solutions and their world visions, and this is somehow the AI is trying to tell us on how to live, how to develop, and how to create, or what is important, and how does the things needs to see. Well, probably when I told it in the interview was more interesting, but yeah, I think the creative processes and the communicational developments are more beyond the maybe capitalistic views of how the communications are going to be built. And in terms of when you are part of a community or share different interests and knowledges, the process of communicated to share them, to call more persons into an important matter, such as social justice, needs a lot of things that are around communication, and this has to be. Oh, okay, thank you. So this is a diagram that I make. One very important part of amigashacker.club is an institution, a fictional institution called Ministry of Drama Management. And I have been struggling because I came from this very interesting communities with feminist thinkers and researchers. And when you face the real world, they don't understand because they come from other work environments with other ethics and a lot of the I don't like the word violences, but a lot of the algorithms are super normalized. And as we work with techies, technologists, I'd like to think about the feminist open source that is mainly from the tradition of kind of anarchist tradition of the technology developers that needs to document everything, that needs to share pieces of the code. And when we share a piece of the code, we solve a week of work of other persons. And it's something that already exists. And when we make images, we are also mixing things that have already been there and have been loaded by meaning by a community. So in this framework, we can resonate, we can trust, and we can look up on how things are. And we can also build a sense of solidarity in the property of things. But we also, for make it sustainable, to make it possible, we need to make, we need to take care of ourselves too. And what is the reasons are why we're doing what the things that we think are important to us. And this is a very for me it's a very huge learning of being part of these communities. And also when we are having learning processes, all our body transforms itself, and also our environment, our communities transforms themselves. And I'm not sure that AI has that property yet.
So I think that one of the, as we said at the beginning, one of the values that we share was precisely this framework of social justice and data justice. And that's why we have also asked Merrin from IT for Change to join and share the framework. So thank you very much in this session. And we welcome Merrin.
Thank you all.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Merrin. Yeah, if you could just briefly introduce yourself and then maybe help us with some summarizing ideas, in a sense, what you find interesting about this study and the questions that we're talking about regarding openness and commons, and how does data justice fit into all of that?
Yeah. Hi. So my name is Merrin, and I'm a research associate at IT for Change, which is an India-based not-for-profit organization working at the intersections of digital technology and social justice. So we work on various aspects of the digital economy, digital public sphere, now the AI paradigm. And so data justice is one of the core components of our work, our research and advocacy. And it has been IT for Change's pleasure to bring together an impressive set of progressive civil society organizations and people's movements for a data justice research project, where we are trying to explore the impact of digitalization and datafication in various domains such as public health, biodiversity, food sovereignty, and open data communities. So through the Data Justice Project, we seek to build a sector-specific, contextually grounded, pro-South visions of data justice principles. So when we talk about data justice, I think what we mean is that the data innovation ecosystems need to promote public interest, generate public value, and be grounded in social contract that views data as common good for collective benefits. So with that vision, we under the Data Justice Research Project, we have partnered with organizations like Open Knowledge Foundation, Third World Network, FIAN International, People's Health Movement, and ETC Group, who are working on different domains like food, public health, biodiversity, etc. So the idea was basically to identify sector-specific, concrete case studies of economic, social, and cultural rights violations and socioeconomic injustices that are stemming from corporate impunity, corporate capture of data, and lack of respect for domestic law and existing loopholes in international and national data governance regimes. So the idea is to build forward. So we felt that a sector-specific analysis was important because data is not only data is relational. I mean, it's the sectoral use of data matters. So for instance, digital sequencing information, when it comes to digital sequencing information, it should be covered under the definition of genetic resources, and use of such data then should be subjected to the access and benefit sharing under the Nagoya Protocol. So data in context and sectors matter. So we thought it would be good to have sector-specific data governance principles. And Open Knowledge Foundation's case study report on sustainable data commons ecosystem provides for a powerful analysis of the difficulties that communities face in accessing and benefiting from the data. The case studies on local government, open science, and graphic designers has surfaced we were going through the report, and and I think it really surfaced the difficulties that they face in using data, and the difficulties range from non-availability of data for community use, limited infrastructure to make use of data, corporates restricting access to public data, and limited attention to equitable benefit sharing and public participation in data ecosystem. And I think the reports emphasize on shifting the focus from open data infrastructure to sustainable data commons is very important, because when we talk about open data, as previous speakers have also told about, it's not enough. Open data is sometimes often reduced to free for all access, which with the expectation that more data exchange will generate more economic value. But in fact, this often leads to a situation where open access to data is reduced to a free for all access without carrying any duties of nurture that are implicit in a commons understanding. So it also ignores the wide disparity in access to data and data processing capabilities. Because even if open data is open, it can be processed and made use of only by a select group of actors, and the communities are not really benefiting from the data that they produce. So as a result, ultimately only a few actors are able to really benefit. Therefore, a data commons practice that is geared primarily towards data sharing and exchange alone cannot address the data capitalist practices. We think an appropriate resource regime for data must preserve not openness of data, but openness of use, that is promoting accessibility or freedom for all economic actors to meaningfully leverage data and for their own community benefit. So this is in line with the principle of, I think the principle of distributive integrity would be helpful. That is ordering the data value creation and distribution on a common set of norms and rules to promote a multiplicity of sustainably productive economic communities. And in fact, the report of Open Knowledge Foundation also notes that What we need are governance structures that will prevent the capture of innovative benefits. So a true data commons approach should treat data as a shared resource that serves the public good. I think the goal is not just to allow free flow of data, but to make sure that data is used to meet specific community needs, so that no one owns the data exclusively. Instead, everyone can access the basic layer of data on equal terms. And people should have a right to access data that is collected, stored, or controlled by private companies, because private companies sometimes hold vast amount of useful public data, and the state is often deprived of such data for their own purposes. You may say in case of a natural disaster, or in case to solve public problems. So the data that is captured by these corporate actors, there should be some mechanisms by which we can access them. I think I'll just conclude maybe by saying that it is, to ensure that data stewardship model, the data stewardship model must preserve the openness of use. So rather than open data, the focus should be on openness of use. So that promotes accessibility of freedom for all economic actors to meaningfully leverage the data. And as Anna mentioned, this may need varying degrees of access rights and associated conditionalities for economic actors. For example, the access right that is given to a private actor may not be the same as that for a public actor. So the differentiated access rights, conditionalities can be imposed on access of data. Purpose limitations can be imposed. So these are all important to ensure that the value of community data, or community has control and they can benefit from the use of the data. They have access to the inferences from the data analysis that is done. And it is not just captured by a few. So I think this case study is an important indicator of different ways to think about how to create a sustainable data commons ecosystem. It really can be a catalyst for future discussions and conversations. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Merrin. That's very nice. The next slide, the last slide. Thanks to everybody who stuck with us the whole time and through the technical glitch as well. We pulled out just one sentence from the report that shows some of what this is all about. How do we center communities rather than data sets? How do we think about building a sustainable data commons? I wonder, oh yes, Renata just mentioned in the chat that there is a link. If you need to leave early, you can download the report. It's not yet published online. It's still in draft format. If you'd like to see it and just browse through it, you're very welcome to take a look and get in touch with Anna and Semra and all of us. Does anybody have any comments or something that they would like to share about their own work or anything they heard today? Curiosity about the approach, a call to action. Now is your chance. You can, how would you go about it? I mean, you could just click on the camera because we're not that many people. Does anyone dare to join us?
Yeah, so if you have any question, you can put it in the chat. If you want us to read it, you can just connect your camera. I would have, actually, I would have to make like a question to the panel, so if I may. If you can, like, so, Yugal, Arturo, Joannis.
Hi.
You have a question? No? Okay. You just show up. So no, for the people of the panel, I will have this question because I think that when we were discussing about the roundtable with Solana, she made this question she put in a slide but we haven't answered, which is, do you feel more or less optimistic about the possibility of doing data commons after the research? of course, the right answer is yes, we are more optimistic, the communities are there, the data is there. But one of the reasons why I am optimistic is because my own approach to commons is very much like a needs-based approach, as Merrin said, not to build the data commons around the needs of the communities. And I think that in that regard, we have seen also through the report how there are a very specific set of needs that are there and that the existing infrastructures and the existing technologies are not covering. So my question to the panel, and to whoever, I mean, also to the audience, is what would be like the one need that this development of a data commons ecosystem could actually cover? No? What is this thing that we need right now? I mean, like, I think that we have to acknowledge that, yeah, we're in a point where we have, I think, already.
Well, I think one of the things that was interesting to me coming late to the report, since I didn't participate in the research, was whether this idea of a data commons is abstract, academic, is it realistic? How do you actually do what you need to do? Everybody is talking about how do we deal with AI? How do we deal with data sharing? Where you want to have more control over what data is shared with who and who gains benefits from it. And so to me, I'm always thinking about what are the practical next steps? How do you make the licenses? How do you have the government's models? How do you actually practically have many different kinds of government models operating at once and then still having people understand what's going on? And that's why this is such a big head project and like a long-term community project, I think, for everybody who's involved with these topics, and why I'm so happy that the Open Knowledge Foundation is dedicating resources, and IT for Change dedicating resources to trying to figure this out, because it needs to stop being conceptual and needs to start getting practical in more people's minds. Because I think what your research is showing is that a lot of this already exists in how people are working in practice in different parts of the world and in these different fields, but it needs to be codified, and there needs to be a narrative, and people need to start using this as like building blocks for change in how we do things. What do you think, Semra?
I think it's a very big project, but it's always an ongoing process, always revisiting attachments and values. It's not, okay, we started it and we are finishing here, because values are changing, attachments are changing all the time. So it's an ongoing inquiry, like the Deweyan sense, you start inquiring the means and the goals, and then you kind of map it out and you decide the best way. But during the inquiry process or at the end of the process, you start another one. It's an always ongoing process, and it's an open process. The process it's open and very collaborative. And I'm saying that not in an abstract sense, really very grounded sense, because sometimes we are looking for like answers and we find them, but it's always you always revisit them. It's the never-ending process. So and very collaborative. I think future is collaborative.
I think that if you look at it from the commons perspective, or from the theory of the commons, as I said before, you canonically have these three elements, which is the resource, so that would be the data, the content, then you have the community, and you have the modes of governance. And I think that what we find in emerging data in emerging commons, not in the traditional commons. It's more like these three elements are nicely waved around this action of commoning. But in emerging commons, what I have seen through the years is that there is not always one element. And I think that this is what we are saying, which is interesting. Communities are central, the governance is central, the data is central. Sometimes you have a community that actually needs some kind of data that you have to advocate for and you have to produce, and then they produce a governance model to go with it. In some other cases, maybe you can propose a governance model, like a new type of license, and around that, then identify certain kind of data resources, and then the communities that are attached to it. And sometimes it will be the data. So I think that the idea, as Semra said, that this is a process, but also that this is a process that can start from different points as kind of starter, sparking. But I think that the data commons ecosystem approach is to say you have to look at for the other two elements, otherwise it's not going to work. But Renata, I'm sure, has some ideas.
Yeah, first of all, thank you and all women research team. It has been an amazing experience to work with all of you. But the most important motivation behind this effort is going back to the roots and understanding what we as a foundation are offering communities to fulfill our mission, to open knowledge, and one of the things is that many of the concepts of 25 years ago are no longer speaking to the hearts of people. So this has been an effort to go back and listen to people and understand why are they sharing, and what is the motivation behind it, and what is more than important of why they are sharing just to share is the reasons of sharing that translate into value to communities that are outside market logics. I mean, and these three communities, if you read the report, you will see that the motivation is not necessarily that, advancing in career, gaining visibility and prestige. There's a genuine motivation, not that it's not also part of it, but there's a genuine motivation to do good and to serve people and to activate change in their communities. So what I love of this is that open data and this fetishism with open data and the standards and the tools, and it is becoming secondary. And what is coming like at the front of the purpose of all of these communities is the change, the tangible change that they are producing. And so it is, you will see in the future, in the upcoming months and years, a turn in the foundation to deliver those blueprints that are needed for this kind of work. And how are we going to govern this so we do not repeat the mistakes of the past of extractivism and appropriation, and then in the end, left many communities and many volunteers exhausted and empty-handed. And of course, we will count on all of you and even more communities to come together and strategize in that gap that we have, because in the past we had like a big tool gap. Now we have many tools, but we have a human gap, if you call it, in how our communities are going to organize around these topics. So I just wanted to say that part of the work will be of course, the already ongoing effort on updating the open definition and what it means to combat the constant open washing everywhere, and looking back at the licenses, looking back at different schemes on how we share and why we share, and not only to protect us against whatever apocalyptic digital future is coming, but to put forward something that is different, responding to different values, and doing the things in a way that is meaningful and that fulfills again our mission to open knowledge. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. No, but there is a question in the chat about the importance of licensing on data commons, and I think this is also something the Open Knowledge Foundation has been working on. So the question is more like on community generated data, is it always the best option to choose the most open license, or is license ultimately a governance decision? And also the idea of copyleft as locking open. And I don't know if any of you.
Well, I'm happy to respond, rapidly to this. I think that the open licenses were thought for a very different time, and we need to reconsider what, I mean, for a public institution with, publicly funded efforts might be like the best approach, because we are paying for that. So we shouldn't pay for it twice, and we shouldn't have restricted access to something that is belonging to all of us. But if you think of communities, and then the question changes, because we cannot have open to all without considering sustainability, because then the open to all will be like very ephemeral and beneficial to those with the power to grab it all as they can, and then not giving anything back. So ideas of reciprocity, ideas of strategic openness to those who need it, with open, but give us a little bit so we can keep it maintained and expanding, might be a schema that you will find soon under our project from Open Data to Sustainable Data Commons. It shouldn't be like, one way, one radical way, open for all, which in the end we saw in the last 20 years, it was open for those who could grab it all. But I'm not the one to respond. I guess that would be just in brief. Licenses are outdated and do not respond to the needs of those who want to share well.
And I think also that of course, license is a governance problem. First of all, licenses are also performative. One of the interviewers was interesting. They say, we use a Creative Commons license in the production that we share, not because people are not going to share it, like, come on, anything that you put in the internet, people will use it and share it or take it. I mean, like, nobody really is taking like the copyright at face value. But he said, like, no, putting a Creative Commons is a call for people to share first. And it's also a way to sign which are our community. We are part of this community. The license also builds communities in itself. And we have seen how, AI have been using copyright, materials with no consequences so far. So licenses work as a performance, as a construction of community around it, and also as a way to, like, a collective agreement. This is what we have agreed that we should be doing together. And in this sense, what Renata says, like, having also Constanza, are putting these other licenses that make you think, who is your community? Who is contributing to this thing so they can use it freely? Who is not contributing? This is also part of the governance discussions. So I think that it is like it's again a tool, but it has been a very useful tool. And I think that producing new license will, advance the discussion on how do we want to do this together, basically. But Semra did a deep dive on, I mean, the report was so long that we have to cut many things. It was a very deep dive. But Semra did also a deep dive on the different formats of license. I don't know if you want to share.
Sure. Also, last fall, I worked on developing a modular type of license for research community. I mean, I just work on to creating the input, the choices that comes from the community, what their concerns are, and how around these concerns that we can build up some modular options for licenses. Because when license is external, not created by the community, sometimes the adaptation of it is really low for various reasons, that maybe license couldn't be understood well, or just doesn't exactly meet the needs of the communities. So we started this, but along the way, also license is just one part of such type of social techno-legal tools. There are also data trusts or other type of innovations or labels. As I interviewed local context, they created labels for disclosure of indigenous data holder communities or the institutions that having indigenous data in their repositories or in their collections. So it's a very just one part of different socio-legal tools that there are many that should be imagined together with communities for full adaptation and for real use and real function.
Thank you, Semra. And thank you, Anna. I think this pretty much brings our session to a close. I pasted the link in the chat again to the PDF of the report if you would like to download it. We're still working on the final version, and then it will be shared online and with the general public. So this is your sneak preview if you want to browse through it. Sarah, would you like to explain what is happening next? Thank you for everybody who came and helped us with the session and who spoke and who participated in the interview process for the report.